Thank you all so much for watching the KC Auction video blog today. We're going to have talking to John Chaski, and Kate Avery is supposed to be joining us in just a moment. Hopefully she jumps on, but we're going to be talking to and about young collectors and dealers. My name is Jason Roske. I'm the KC Auction Appraisal Company here in Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm really excited to have John join us today to talk about his business and what got him interested in the business and things like that. So John, let's go jump right on into it. How did you get started in this? What brought you to the antique industry, and then what kind of business are you running now?
So I got started like a lot of people I think you find in the business. It was a family thing. My dad was a sort of part-time dealer and collector, still a collector of Delaware-related things, manuscripts, furniture, sort of anything Delaware history. And so it started with me going to auctions with him. He might leave me in one ring of the auction, probably the junk ring, while he was in the other ring. And then he got me my first job when I was 13, I think, working for a local auction house as one of the runners. We don't really go to that many auctions today that have that. So many of them are online, but I would be the guy that would hold this thing up while the auctioneer was chanting, and then run it out to the successful buyer after it was over. And that sort of progressed with that auction house to, I took an interest in the stuff. I've always been a history buff. My dad is a big history buff. So I became interested in the, in material culture, in objects, not just in the auction business as a job. And so I ended up cataloging auctions for that auctioneer, and actually was really sort of like, I don't think about it much, but really he was a very early adapter of online auctions. He was on, I cataloged his first auction on live auction, what's now Live Auctioneers. I think back then it was called eBay Live or something along those lines. I honestly can't even remember. But it was early. I mean, it would have been like, this would have been 2004, 2005, maybe even 2003, I think. So I got into that, and that got me into some of the e-commerce side of it. Started selling stuff on eBay, decided to go to Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, pretty exclusively based on the fact that I would be in sort of this hub of the antiques business in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. So I did that, and it all sort of spiraled out of control. I was going to the markets in Adamstown. I was pulling all-nighters on Saturday nights. It seemed more efficient to just, you're up late anyway, and it didn't make much sense to go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning and wake up at 4 o'clock to go to the market. So I would just, pound a Red Bull or two and just stay up all night and go to the markets and get home 11 o'clock in the morning or so on Sunday and take a nap. So that really, through high school, I probably didn't envision myself as a full-time antiques dealer. College and being involved with everything going on in Adamstown exposed me to the idea that it actually could be a livelihood. And so that's what I did. Hey, Kate. Hi. I sort of dove right in after college and never looked back. So now I do a few shows a year. I do the e-commerce stuff. I do auction to auction stuff. Anything to put a livelihood together.
Excellent. So you've been in it for quite a while, even though you're young.
Yeah. So I graduated from college in 2009 and have been full time since then, and was probably, closer to full time than my professors would have liked to have known, during college too.
Probably. That's awesome. And Kate, thanks so much for joining us. This is Kate Avery, just joined us from Aaron Space. I want to say Aaron Design. Kate Avery Design at Aaron Space. So Katie, I asked John, or
Yes.
Kate, sorry. I asked John what got him interested in the business, how he evolved, and what he's going to do now and going forward with the business that way.
Well, I've kind of been collecting since I was a little kid, like 8, 9. I started collecting antiques. My parents are both antiques collectors, so I was kind of raised with it. And then I went to school for historic fashion, which of course there wasn't really much of a career in that, but I did end up in the museum field after that. So I worked as the visitor services manager at the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center. And then after that, I worked for Liverant Antiques in Colchester, which was by far the best education that I've gotten, far better than my time at UConn. And I absolutely love antiques. Now I refinish furniture, and I'm primarily a landscape painter, but my husband and I are both very active collectors of antiques. So we go to a lot of the shows and the flea markets and the shops and all that. So.
Very cool, very cool. So I want to ask you guys both, I want to talk about a few different things as I'm trying to figure out my buttons here. So where do you guys source most of your things? Where do you find the material, and what are you looking for when you're looking to buy something for inventory for yourselves?
Well, for me, when I'm flipping furniture, of course, it's a very different body of furniture or objects than I would say collect for my house. I'm looking for things that are late 19th century or more recent, and generally speaking, price point is a big factor for me. Most of the things that I'm selling once they've been refinished or painted, they're under $500. So I really want to get the stuff for under $50 to make it worth my while. And there is certainly a glut of dark wood furniture from the early 20th to mid 20th century on the market at flea markets and Facebook Marketplace. So that's where I'm getting most of the stuff that I am then turning around and selling. In terms of our collection, little bit of everywhere. My husband and I go to a lot of the antique shows back when we had them. And I just bought a couple pieces from that Broomfield online show. I've bought things from John through the years, other dealers that I'm friends with. Flea markets, things like that. So actually, flea market sign right there.
John, how about you?
A little bit of everything, really. I mean, I watch all the auctions online. My morning routine is I get up and I work 12 days out. So I get on Live Auctioneers, High Bid Maryland, High Bid Delaware, Invaluable, and Bid Square. And whatever date is 12 days from now, I look at every auction on there except for the ones that are, like make-believe jewelry and seized asset auctions, that sort of thing. So I do a lot of that online. I go to a few local auctions weekly. I watch Auction Zip for auctions I might want to go to in, say, a 150-mile radius. I buy from other dealers when I set up, like at Brimfield or some of the other shows I do. I like to try to, buy from your fellow dealers. I think that's important now to support each other as best we can.
Right. Absolutely. So where do you guys, I know right now we're in COVID and things like that. So where do you generally sell your wares, and how do you attract younger buyers? And that's kind of the whole thing, your young buyers and collectors and dealers. Where do you sell at? How do you find younger buyers? And do you find younger buyers? Or are you kind of anomaly still?
Well, my clientele is primarily under the age of 50. It's mostly millennials who are, say, moving house or moving into a larger house or just changing up their design. I sell almost exclusively online. I have about 61,000 followers on my Facebook page, and then another 2,800 on my Instagram. And I've even sold through Reddit. So really pushing your social media accounts, I think, is the most important thing to do to reach young people. And it's also how I shop. Like I said, a lot of the things that I'm buying from Facebook Marketplace, or I'm seeing posted on dealers' social media pages. Josh Steenberg is a great example of someone who does a really good job of using their social media. He posts objects daily, and that's always coming up on my Instagram feed, and I'm seeing what he's got that's new and fresh. And that's definitely the case when I'm selling as well. I don't set up anywhere. I used to do what I called tag sales, but they were basically just kind of big open air markets on my lawn about 3 times a year, but I'm not even going to be doing those anymore because it was a lot more work than it needed to be. And I'm not having any trouble selling just through social media. So I think that if you want to reach the young audience, they're busy, they're booked solid with events with their children, with work things. They're not leaving the house, especially now because of COVID. But they're very dialed in to the social media channels, and that's how they're shopping. So I think dealers wanting to reach a younger audience, that needs to be your #1 priority.
So real quick before you jump into that, John, did you say 61,000 followers on
Yes.
Facebook?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. How long have you had that page?
Since 2011. And I'll tell you, what I did to get there was I advertised pretty aggressively about 3 or 4 years ago. And I invested a couple $1,000s into advertising over the course of a couple of years. And that really grew it. I stopped advertising because Facebook changed their algorithm to the degree that these people that I was getting as followers weren't seeing nearly as much of my content. Facebook wanted me to boost every single post. So it's just not worth it. I'm not going to be paying twice. So though I still have that following, and certainly it's the primary place where I engage with my clients, I'm no longer growing it. I mean, I could advertise and get up, to 250, 300,000, and it wouldn't be that difficult, but it wouldn't really be worth it either, because I don't know that I'd be reaching those people to the degree that I do this kind of cult following that I've built of people that buy from me.
Right.
So.
Yeah. The good content really drives traffic and buying.
And staying on top of it, because your algorithms, you have to be posting frequently, because the more that people are engaging with each post, the more they're going to be seeing your content on their timeline. So staying on top of it, staying active, keeping it fresh, lots of visuals. People are very visual content oriented on social media. So, you just have to do your due diligence in that regard.
Absolutely. And did you say you sold something through Reddit?
I've sold multiple things through Reddit. Yeah, absolutely. There's a pretty vibrant antiques community on Reddit, and also a lot of my artwork I've sold through there. So
I had no idea. I don't think of Reddit as anything other than like a
you'd
kind
be
of
surprised.
obviously I would be. I should look at that more closely. I've not looked at that at all. So John, how about you? Where do you sell mainly? What kind of things do you do historically? And obviously you're different right now because of COVID.
Yeah, so Reddit is one shout out to the Reddit what's this painting subreddit or whatever. I think it's called something like that. If you Google around, you'll find it. There is like this whole antique community on Reddit, and one of the best ones I've found is I think it's called What Is This Painting, and they're really good. I mean, paintings I haven't been able to figure out. You post it on there, and within an hour, 10 people who are just familiar with the artist, I guess, recognize the signature and will tell you. Anyway, off of the Reddit subject, I am, I don't know, I'm probably pretty much a dinosaur. I do maybe a half a dozen shows a year. I consign a lot to auctions. I wholesale to dealers. I'm a terrible person to be talking about how to reach people my own age, because
That's not true. You do a great job. Those videos you post are really funny and they're really engaging. Don't sell yourself short, John.
I try, but like Kate said, I know that the algorithm is important and that the consistency is important, and I like to think I make good content, but that is the key. I mean, you have to meet them where they are on their terms. To think that we're going to do antique shows and we're going to have, a mocha-ware picture in the booth that's only $95, and that's going to be how we're going to reach the young collectors, because there's something in the booth that's $95, even though, the chest of drawers it's sitting on is $75,000. It's just not going to cut it. You have to meet them where they are on their level. And social media obviously is the way to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are really great points. And I've got to tell you, I am gobsmacked at the Reddit conversation. I have no idea. I
suspect John and I probably have interacted with each other on Reddit and have no idea.
Yeah, she's probably identified my paintings before.
Really? So I've never spent any time on Reddit, so I have no input into this conversation. So I'm curious. I'm definitely going to look into it because I agree with both of you. Since we went online only about 6 years ago, our demographic for our customers has dropped in age precipitously, which is a great thing. And it proves to me that the young buyers are still out there. But yeah, Reddit is something.
Well, and I think.
Go ahead.
Right. And I mean, I feel like a dinosaur. I'm not doing like TikTok and stuff like that. I don't even know what that is. But I think to John's point, the selling in person is a huge step for millennials to take. It's kind of like, I'm terrified to have phone conversations. I'd much rather text someone. It's just this kind of weird thing about people my age that it's very intimidating. And it's something that you don't do as an initial contact. So you might get them to come to the shows, but it's not going to be their first foray into the antiques world. You need to be making those contacts and building that comfort initially with social media before they're going to go out and go to, say, the Connecticut Spring Show or whatever. That's a big, scary step. And there are so many little steps that need to happen before that, before they come to your auction or before they come to your shop. You need to be doing that work ahead of time to build that comfort level before you can ever do that face-to-face selling. It has been my experience. So
yeah, and I don't, I want to clarify, like when I was complaining about, the $95 piece of pottery on, I think having things at a diverse price structure is really important. It shows if you are going to try to get them to shows, you do have to do that. But I guess a lot of my colleagues, I hear them saying, yeah, that's a great idea. But inevitably, the thing that's under $100 is like, something you can drink out of. And like, that's not really price diversity. Like price, and then any desk or something they could actually use is like, thousands and thousands of dollars. I'm a dealer. I do shows. I know that it makes absolutely no sense to take a piece of furniture to an antique show where the booth rent was $2,000. I know if you calculate the square footage and what it's costing you, you can't take a slant front desk that you're going to price $850. But I do anyway, and like I feel like that's important.
Right.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I was kind of, when we were in the run up to this, and I was thinking about things that we do need to do to attract a younger audience, is you have to take it on the chin sometimes, and sometimes that's not going to be a short benefit, but it's going to be a long-term benefit.
Oh, Katie.
$100 did that, I think I've disappeared here. Hold on, my internet's kind of, I'm back. So maybe he's taking a loss in the short term for that table, but he's then built that connection, and that's going to benefit everyone because that person's going to feel good about that interaction. They're going to feel like they got a good deal. They're going to feel like antiques are approachable, and then they're going to come to more shows. They're going to visit other dealers too. So sometimes we have to think a little bit more universally versus thinking, okay, I need to make my booth rent. I need to make a lot of money. I'm going to bring this $75,000 highboy. And the thing is, every time a young person comes into a show and they see nothing that they can buy, you lost them. They're not going to come back because it's embarrassing and it feels kind of crappy, So we all need to together consider putting objects into our booths, putting objects onto our social media that feel approachable, even if maybe it's not a really esoteric, high level, Massachusetts cherry chest of drawers, and that's what you typically deal in. As a community, we need to think about kind of like giving this a ramp up to new buyers and collectors. So
absolutely, and I've got a couple of things to address what you guys both said. I think that was amazing. What you both said were spot on. What you just said about being intimidated going to an antique show is so true, Kate. I lived in DC for years, and when I was about your guys' age, in my early to mid 30s, earlier than that anyway. I did a really killer third quarter for me, right? So I went to the New York Antique Winter Antique Show to see what the big boys sell, right? And I got to tell you, I left there feeling about as big as an ant because it was so overwhelmingly expensive and impressive, but overwhelming. Like I walked by one dealer's booth who was selling Native American objects, and he had these big olas on the ground, and they were great. But he's sitting there in their suit, and his potential customers sitting in their suit, and they're talking about him, and he's literally kicking at them, saying, "This one's $60,000, that one's $80,000, that one's 100." I'm like, are you kidding me? How do you, like you said, that doesn't translate to anybody, and at that point, it's so far beyond the pale. And then what you guys talked about having a diverse range of things. I had a client meeting this morning, or potential client meeting. And I told them, I don't look at values of objects as much as interest. I don't care. It could be a great $50 item, and the great $50 item will bring in buyers who 10 years from now will pay $5,000 for a painting and feel absolutely comfortable with it. I think that's such important information for dealers and auctioneers to consider, that you have to have that wide range. And you're right, it doesn't make sense for me to sell a $50 thing to pay staff and space and everything else. But when we have a 28-year-old come in and bought a picture for $75 and they love it, I know that person's going to check out my website for the next 20 years. And so it's really, you talk about spending hard dollars in advertising, having those things as an advertising thing as well. Really great points on both of you right there. So John, I want to start with you on this. And I know, because I see you sold an incredibly diverse range of things. I think you sold Harlequin romance novels last year, paperbacks. You spent to some people be an obscene amount of money on a stoneware bank this last spring, I think. What's been the most interesting thing you've sold in your career? Not necessarily the most expensive, but what's been the most interesting thing that you've sold, the thing that you kind of wish you'd have back?
Oh, shoot, that is tough.
That's a good question.
The most interesting thing. Gosh, that is tough. I'm going to have to talk in circles for a second while I try to come up with something.
Please do.
I mean, as far as buying Harlequin romance novels and but then also expensive pieces of stoneware, things like that. I just, I don't know. I love the business. I mean, I love the material, but I also just love the business. I love, doing deals. I love the Harlequin romance novels. I love just living in the dirt and just, going to a terrible auction and managing to find these boxes of horrible romance novels with these cheesy pictures on the front, and being able to buy them for $20 and turn them into $500. And that even verges more into the whole flipping thing than being an antiques dealer. But I love the versatility. I love that I can do it. And a lot of people probably just think I'm crazy and how can you do both things? I don't know. That's just me, and that's what I'm gonna do. So most interesting thing I wish I had back. Gosh, that is hard.
And you've been doing this how long now?
On the top of your head, I gotta think.
For me, it's always the pieces that either have objects that have been left behind from the previous owners, tucked behind the drawers, or really interesting inscriptions. Anytime there's that connection to either the maker or one of the early owners, that's always extremely satisfying. I had this desk, and it was kind of a Larkin style desk, late 19th century, and in just foul, decrepit condition, and was a huge challenge. And I mean, I cursed it top to bottom while I worked on it, because everything on it was wrong or broken. Hang on, I think I've got a fire truck going by. Just a sec.
That's a good mic for you.
I think this is the graduation parade.
Another COVID reality.
Just a sec, guys. I'm going to move into my house a little bit closer and away from. So I think this is going to go on and on. I'll be a little bit quieter here. So this desk, on the backside of the drawer, it had the name of the young lady that originally owned it and her address. So I was able to look her up, and she had lived in a brownstone in the Bronx. and I think it was dated like 1904. And so, through that, I was able to pull up her whole family history and kind of follow her as she bounced around various boroughs in New York and had children and got married and all this kind of really cool stuff. And I don't even remember who I sold it to, but it was just one of those moments where it's just like such a nice thing to be able to give this piece back its story, tell that whole history, and kind of honor her that she took the time to write that information down, so that she's not anonymous anymore. Her story hasn't been lost. So definitely those are always the ones that really kind of, hit a chord with me.
Excellent.
Now you're back on, John. You got to come up with something.
I know. I do have something recent. So I did just have a really cool set of books. Winning the West, it was called. It's a Teddy Roosevelt book, and it's in 4 volumes, and it was the Daniel Boone edition, which means that inside the cover of the first one, it's not like signed by Teddy Roosevelt per se, but it has a copy of the original manuscript that he wrote, like with corrections and stuff, pasted inside the front cover of the first book. And that was something really cool. And that's coming to mind because it's recent. I'm sure, with more time, I could think of something a little juicier. But I thought that was really cool. I had never heard of that edition before. I never had anything like that where, you're holding a copy of the book and it has a manuscript for the book inside. And it was a little, extra meaningful or interesting because I had just finished reading TR's autobiography that Jen got me for, I think, my birthday to read, and then that set of books showed up, and it just seemed meant to be. But in my greed and want for cash flow, I flipped them.
I think it's nice kind of to move this stuff along, though. I never feel too terrible about selling this stuff because it's kind of like every time you sell something, instead of keeping it, number one, it's someone else who's going to appreciate that piece, and number two, then you have a spot you can fill. And is there anything more fun than shopping?
That's so true. As growing up in high school, I mean, and I still do. I love the stuff. Like, I love stuff. But, there were these things, I sort of had like a wish list of things I wanted to own. And when I first sort of was making this mental list, I guess I thought I wanted to own them forever. I wanted one. I wanted to own one. I wanted it in my house. But more and more, I find that, as I tick things off this mental list, I really am a dealer at heart. And like Kate said, buying it and selling it and moving it on, even though I don't own it anymore, it does fulfill that need.
Yeah, it's the thrill of the hunt. That's the thing that's really satisfying.
Yeah, I think that's how we ended up becoming. And I was a dealer before I was an auction house. So yeah, I understand that completely. I always wanted a really good Windsor writing arm desk, right? It's kind of a rare form, but completely useless. And one showed up at a small auction here about a year and a half ago. And I went and nobody else knew what it was. The auctioneers, they told me it was worth like $1,500, but whatever. And I jumped in, started the bidding at $100, and it was crickets. Nobody else bid on it. And it was 1820s. Hitchcock paint, the whole 9 yards. I brought it home for like 2 months. I'm like, yeah, I can't even sit in it because the way it was formed, my big old frame doesn't fit in it. And I was like, I guess it's going to my auction. I made some money on it, but it was like, yeah, owning it, like it was like an achievement level in a video game, right? I got to that level, and I opened up the next one and went on. So no, that's all really good stuff. I'm kind of going to wrap it up here in a couple minutes. I want to give each of you a couple minutes to just talk about anything you want to in the antique industry, anything we didn't talk about today that you were hoping we would, and give you a couple of, minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever you want, to kind of just tell us more than what you want people to know about you, your business, yourselves, and what you think about the industry as a whole. And let's start this time with, I'll go to Kate this time because I went to John last time.
Well, one of the things I did want to touch on a little bit more is I'd love to see more altruism in the field of antiques. I'd like to see more mentoring done by people who are comfortable high up, the high-end dealers. I think as a field right now, it's a place where we really could do better. I'm only here being an advocate for antiques because Arthur Liverant took a chance on me. I had no experience in antiques outside being kind of a low-level collector. And that was really my first exposure to high-end objects. And every time you reach out to someone who either wants a career or wants to be a new collector, you know, maybe that's an investment that you're not going to get short-term earns on, but it's going to make a difference for all of us in the end. And as the antiques community continues to age, we're seeing less and less people coming in as dealers and collectors. Millennials don't have the kind of liquid assets that makes it easy to become a dealer, especially on the high end. And so booth rents and things like that are completely unapproachable. They can't do it. So I would love to see the antiques field do a better job of thinking about where all of these objects are going to go in 15 or 20 years when a lot of the dealers are retiring, a lot of the dealers are selling their collections and moving to Boca Raton. We have an obligation as an industry to be stewards for these pieces. And if we're not thinking about what's going to come next and helping people to get to a position where they can also be stewards for these objects, then it's a disservice to everyone that's come before us, everyone who made those pieces, and everyone who appreciates them. So I'd like people to take a little bit more ownership as a group, as a field, for what's going to be the next step. So.
Perfect. I like that a lot.
Hard to follow.
Well, John, last time I put you down first, you kind of floundered, so she got the.
She did. She
but same thing to you. What would you like to share? Let people know about.
I'll try. I'll try to spin it. Spin some positive vibes here. I mean, I agree with. I don't want to be misunderstood. I agree with everything Kate said. We can definitely do a lot better. But you know, if we're talking about like where are the young dealers and all that. Do they exist? Like I liked your tagline for promoting this event. Like, you know, they do. Here are two of them. And they do exist. They do exist. They don't necessarily exist in the way that, you know, the community Kate's talking about would like to see them exist. You know, but that's a problem that community has. Yeah, dealers my age, like I said, I'm a little bit of a dinosaur, but most of the dealers I know, and there's a lot of them, they are just not interested in having this enormous inventory that is cumbersome in terms of both capital and physical space and caretaking. And they would rather just flip the stuff. They'd rather flip the stuff to dealers, flip the stuff online. So I would just say that, you know, if you're worried about where the young dealers are and where the young collectors are, you are on the internet watching this video right now. So great news. If you get onto one of the social media channels or even YouTube, where you don't even have to have an account, you can find them. They're out there. You can see what they have for sale and you can buy something from them.
Absolutely. And I want to say real quick, back to Kate, Nathan Liverant is an amazing man. I talked to him.
Arthur. Nathan was his grandfather. Arthur.
Right, Arthur. We had a piece.
Nathan was an amazing man too, but
we had a piece of an estate recently. There was a miniature secretary bookcase, and it had a name written inside of it and a date. And digging, I found out that this craftsman had worked for the Liverants for many, many years and was their main furniture restoration guy. And so I sent them an email, and whoever worked for him at the time got back to me right away and said call him at his cell phone, and I did. And we talked for, I want to say 45 minutes about this person and this piece of furniture and the industry, and completely giving. So that altruistic mentality exists in many of the dealers out there. It's just a matter of finding a way to connect them with folks who would be willing to accept that information.
Yeah, I mean, I think mentorship is a really good thing for any industry, and even if it's just, you know, inviting someone to come in and learn how you do business. I mean, thing with antiques is people are very secretive. They're secretive about their sources. They're secretive about their pricing, all of that kind of thing. So it's hard and it's scary, but it's good, valuable work. And I think it's going to make a world of difference in the long run for the field. So as John said, there are dealers out there. There are young dealers out there. I am seeing those young dealers very excited and very passionate. And so, of course, we all share this passion across generations, and we just need to find a way to kind of use that a little bit better so that we can help the younger dealers to get to a point where they can handle the $75,000 highboys and things, because right now that's really a difficult step to take. And so I think as a community, we just need to think about how we can make that a little bit easier for everybody, because it benefits everyone.
Yeah, that's always been a difficult step to take.
Yeah, I don't have $75,000 highboys.
No, it's a big step for every generation. Well, I want to thank you guys both so much for joining us today. It's been I've had a great time talking to you about the industry, about you guys, finding out more about you. Hopefully we can, this video and others can attract younger buyers to the industry that we all love and have a passion for. It's funny, as I was thinking about this morning getting ready, I realized I'm not a younger dealer anymore when I have to put my glasses on to make sure I don't have hairs growing out of areas of my body that they never grew out of before. I'm not that old, but I'm closer to 50 than to 45, so I'm definitely not a young dealer anymore. But thank you both so much for watching, and thank everyone else for watching today on the KC Auction video blog. We do this every Friday. Next week, I have Tracy Cailey from Cailey Appraisals here in Kansas City. She's a jeweler, worked for Tibbles here in town. Is going to talk about all things related to jewelry and jewelry appraising. Excited to have her on. If you have questions, please post them in the comments here or on YouTube. Send us a direct message. John and Kate's email information has been scrolling across the bottom of the screen, so you can just go back to where they were on and do a screenshot of that, and you'll be able to get them. I'll post that in the comments below as well. Again, thank you all so much for watching. Have a great afternoon. You can always reach us at info@kcauctioncompany.com or give us a phone call at 816-283-3633. Again, thank you guys both so much for joining us today. Have a great weekend, and let's do this again sometime.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
All right.